water landing in the Gulf of Mexico. We don't intend to recover any of the hardware for either the ship or the booster today. But that booster, yeah, we want to try and demonstrate controlled ascent through most engine cutoff. We want to try to demonstrate that hot staging separation and
through kind of nicely.
Trying to
I think everything is doing good. I hope everything is
burn,
doing good. I'm gonna have to check it out on my
soft
phone.
water landing.
We are
like
about
said,
a few minutes
inform
away from
when
the
we attempt a
SpaceX
land
Starship
landing, but,
launch
you know, we
second
start in the
test
water
of their
first.
Starship,
Exactly.
which
Just
has
like we did
been
with Falcon
honestly
9.
a huge moment, honestly,
And,
for at least for me and maybe
just
for
getting
other
to hot
viewers of the
staging, though, is
channel,
gonna be
as
farther than we got
typically
on
I
Flight
do
1.
try to
Flight
do
1,
some
that was
space
about as far
content
as we
every once
got.
in a
We didn't
while,
have
and I
hot
do
staging
find it the
on that
most
vehicle.
interesting.
So
We
that's
are
the
in
first and
essentially
foremost
a new
objective
space
today.
age
Get that far, hopefully.
in terms of like a new space race
Fingers crossed.
of who is going to be doing
Now, one thing that's a little
really
cool
who's going to be
about
getting
Starship,
anywhere
and
at the
it's
moment. I
different from
know that,
Falcon
you know,
9,
we
is
are
we can
trying
actually
to be the
hold a
first
little
ones to
bit
retrieve
longer if we
samples from
needed
Mars.
to
We're trying
than
to
we can on
build
Falcon
a
9
moon
missions.
base, you know,
Once we
called
get to T-minus
what's it, the Stargate project. On top of all that, going ahead and mute the stream real quick. We are just watching the SpaceX stream at the moment, although we do have several different types of other streams that we could also be watching here in a moment. We also got along the lines of, we got video from space, we've got stuff from Everyday Astronaut, which also has plenty of other camera angles at the same time, which, you know, I'm not going to take any precedence or ownership of this type of stuff. This is all Everyday Astronauts. You know, he's all getting all those different things with the SpaceX girl or the gal. And then we also got other things from La Padre. La Padre also does a lot of work in terms of trying to get camera angles and other like equipment up front for everyone to kind of view. Honestly, yeah, kind of just really hoping to see where this goes. If we remember from the very first Starship test, it did all right. It got up into the air, pretty much. It got up into the air, and then it basically did not do as well as they thought they were going to perform, and they had some issues with trying to get the in-flight termination system working properly. So there was a delay in terms of trying to get that to go off as the Starship kind of tumbled around in midair. But we are looking at about less than 2 minutes left. Going to take a look over at Everyday Astronauts type of footage here, because they do have some great type of
we don't have that option
view
on
shots
Falcon,
going on here,
so
as well as the
it's, a little bit
SpaceX
different
audio
here.
going on in the background. Make sure that we are all good to go. T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds. Sometimes they do cancel at the last moment simply because, you know, maybe there is some flight range issues of someone being in the splashdown zone. There are people too close. Sometimes they discover an issue at the last moment on their pre-warm-up. They have their oxidizer. They have all the propellants. They have everything just completely loaded, and we are ready to launch in about a minute here. And ooh, this is going to be exciting. Is this going to crash down on the pad? Is this going to even leave the pad? Last time they had an issue. Last time they had an issue where they didn't have a water deluge system at the bottom, so when all 32 Raptors fired off, they actually damaged some of their own engines trying to get up into the air. And still they managed to have more than enough thrust to keep pushing this rocket even higher, with which I believe it had about 6 different engines that had been taken out during the takeoff, and it still managed to go. But now they have a new water deluge system, which should be protecting the foundation of the entire Stage 0 area of the Starship launching. So it should be hopefully getting rid of any of that debris that could potentially launch itself back up into the engine bay and create any leaks and or Raptor engine kind of segment failures. This is going to be exciting. About 20 seconds to go. Ooh, now they do also have a new hot staging ring that separates. Oh, there is a hold. There is a hold. I think there's always a hold though at T-minus 20 seconds, as they do last pre-flight tech checks.
Get ready, guys. We're about T-minus 30 seconds or so.
At T-minus 30 seconds, okay. We're gonna see what happens here.
Okay.
Oh boy, okay, I'm excited. Come on. Let's see what happens with it. Is it gonna fail? Are we gonna be able to get the hot staging? This is gonna be a test. This is not meant to necessarily succeed. We are kind of predicting that there are going to be some issues. We need to see what happens with the hot staging, because they have a hot staging ring where basically the second part of the rocket launches off before it even detaches from this bottom section. And then it also kind of has a flame diverter where the top side engines kind of flame out the center parts of like the rocket, in terms of like we're trying to get that first initial boost off of the bottom side of the initial lift stage. So we are kind of excited to see how well that works if it detaches properly. They have risen this thing and taken this thing down multiple times, checked the locks many times. They've done lots of stuff in trying to make sure that all the quick disconnect is working well, that the lift arms, everything should be good. They yesterday they were going to launch yesterday, but they had a problem with the grid fin actuators, so they had to take it down and kind of try to re-inspect the actuators to make sure everything is working properly.
This is the normal hold point for Starship.
Yeah, I'm trying to give a list, and it says that this is the normal hold point.
Just late pressurization on, I believe, the second stage.
Yep, late pressurization on the second stage. They're trying to make sure all the lines are doing good. They're trying to make sure that everything is holding well. They're trying to make sure that everything is going to launch off properly. Because this is the largest rocket that we have ever launched. This is the largest rocket that will probably ever launch in a long time. This is the most thrust. This is the tallest. This is the widest. This is, I don't know about the widest, but this is essentially the epitome of our new space race, which is SpaceX. Because if they can get this thing working properly in, let's say, a few years, then we can regularly see the Starship going up into orbit and doing their best to try and really become the primary commercial type of provider for space assets. You know, I want to keep the volume up. I want to make sure that you guys, I mean, a little hard to hear me maybe over the background talking, but I want to make sure that we keep a little bit of an audio in the background and make sure that we don't lose any chance of what's going to be happening here.
We only have a 20-minute launch window, so don't go away.
They have about a 20-minute launch video.
And just like Shiva said, we can restart that clock, and there it is.
And there it goes. Oh my God! Countdown.
Oh, countdown.
Ben, go up. Ben, up. 30 seconds.
T-minus 30 seconds.
T-minus 30 seconds. Okay, we are ready to go. We are ready to go. Geez, we are ready to go. I need to make sure that I'm actually also recording at the same time. I really hope this isn't going to be an issue. Okay, good. We are recording at the same time. T-minus 30 seconds. We are launching. We are launching. I could have swore I just heard him say T-minus 15, but it is leaving the pad. It is leaving the pad. We are going up. DigiDs, we are up. Oh, that is tilting. We are going. We are going. Oh, yeah, baby. It is off the pad. Okay, we do not have any immediate pad detonation. Oh, look at this thing go. Oh, look at this thing go. Oh, it is moving. It hasn't fallen apart yet. It doesn't seem to be tilting over too bad. All the Raptor engines seem to be active. We haven't had any issues of stage 0 foundation throwing dust up into the engine bay. So all 32 Raptor engines appear to be firing and thrusting properly. We are actually in the air. Hopefully we don't have to worry about any flight termination type of issues in terms of like range systems of where this thing is going to be landing. Give it a little bit of a listen. Just let's go ahead and just appreciate the moments as we are in a moment.
We've heard power telemetry.
Max Q.
Yes, Max Q.
They have max Q. They have nominal trajectory.
This is good.
That is doing great. They are right on the money. They have no issues. Everything's going on perfectly fine. We are having great liftoff. Now we need to see if the hot stage separation is going to work properly for when the second stage detaches from the bottom side, where remember it is going to be firing off its engines primarily first before it even actually fully detaches. So we need to see if this is going to be working properly. Now this is just a test. I don't think they are going to be trying to catch the second stage at all or the first stage. They're both going to be splashing down into the ocean. I can't quite tell if that's just an atmospheric bit of type of lensing. It looks like it's almost bending over a tiny bit, but I can't quite tell. Let's listen in on the mission control audio.
They're still firing on super heavy. We'll flip the booster around. 10 more engines will ignite for the boost back burn, putting the first stage on path for a splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, yeah, so they're going to be splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico. They are not going to be trying to be capturing this thing. All the Raptor engines that still appear to be firing off perfectly nominally. I think maybe I can kind of keep an eye out for maybe one has shut down. I can't quite tell, but honestly, they are looking great, considering the fact that the first launch, they had so much debris launched up from stage 0 type of foundation that the concrete took out about 6 of them, and it still managed to fly pretty much nominally. This is fantastic. They're actually doing great. Let's go ahead and see if we can see, are there any other better viewpoints on any of these other streams? Not quite seeing it. Oh, we have second stage. We have second stage.
Oh my God.
Second stage separation. They have separated. There is first stage turning back. They're doing the boost back.
Oh, look, see them separated.
Yep. Okay, they're doing their boost back.
Booster engine cut off.
Oh my God, that is floating away quite a distance. Let's see how far that first stage can honestly go. Is it going to be on point into the Gulf of Mexico?
It worked. It worked.
This is insane.
Worked.
This is insane.
It appears to have worked. It appears to have worked. First stage is boosting back, and they have blown it up in midair. They flight terminated it. And they have flight terminated the first stage. Or was that second stage? Oh, that must have been the second stage. First stage is coming back. Oh, and there it goes, first stage.
And as you can see, the Super Heavy booster has just experienced a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. However, our ship is still underway with all 6.
Power and telemetry nominal.
And we just heard there, ship avionics, power and telemetry nominal. All 6 engines are lit, as you can see from the GUI there at the bottom right-hand side of your screen.
Oh, that is fantastic. Sure, they may have had it done in flight termination in flight.
We did know that the that hot staging was going to be incredibly dynamic. We knew that there was a chance that the booster would not survive, but we're going to take that data and figure out how we can make the booster better for the next hot stage.
Unbelievable.
That hot staging put a lot of load on the top of the booster, and of course it flipped around there, a lot of dynamic stuff happening, but ship is still going strong.
And it's doing great. Right now,
okay, so the second stage has not.
On its way.
Second stage is
like
still doing well. It's only the first stage that seems to have blown up. I'm going to go ahead and actually look at the screen real quick, make sure that I'm still sounding good.
The next major milestone for the ship will be the shutdown of those engines.
So beautiful.
Or SECO. Second engine
I think we are doing great. All I think I need to do is maybe turn down the regular desktop volume just a little bit, because it is a little hard to hear me over the talking, but we are doing great. So the first stage, the main lift stage, has kind of had a bit of an issue on that hot staging type of situation, where I guess the hot staging may have damaged the bottom booster. It was doing a proper burn back or boost back type of situation, but it may have gone a little bit off kilter of its trajectory where it needs to be landing in the Gulf of Mexico, so it had decided to terminate the system. They probably had too many issues. Maybe the hot staging, kind of altered something, or what do they call it, punctured the top side of the first stage, maybe kind of created an inside fire. There are so many different issues that could be associated with the idea of a hot stage, but the second stage is still doing great. Second stage is still boosting through the atmosphere at the moment. Try to take a listen in on the mission audio.
Controlled ascent, which is what it's doing right now, and eventually orbital insertion. We are hoping to basically send this around the Earth, and if it makes it this far, splash down in the Pacific Ocean, a couple hundred miles north of Hawaii.
Oh my God. So it's on a nominal, again, it is
Now,
on
if we
track.
get that far, like, all of that sounds great. Secondary objectives for ship, again, continuing to gather engine data and about its health, performance.
All right, so as we can tell at the moment, I mean, it seems as though that the second stage is going completely perfectly well at the moment. They are hoping to do an orbital insertion, and they're going to make sure that this thing can do a full orbit all the way around Earth and come landing down into the Gulf of Mexico. So this is honestly a phenomenal type of update and improvement of the Starship, considering that the first stage had an issue with no water deluge system that took out multiple Raptor engines, and they basically had to flight termination rapid disassembly pretty much in flight last time, simply because it was tumbling around, had too many issues of where its flight path and trajectory was going. But now that we have, this is the second test. The first stage did end up having a blow up in midair, which is, half expected. We didn't really know what was going to happen with that first stage trying to do the boost back, but we were glad that it lasted long enough for the hot staging ring to survive the liftoff of the second stage. And as we can see, even though the first stage is blown up, the second stage is more than well on its way, more than just a tiny little dot and speck out in the distance up in the atmosphere. We are honestly looking great in terms of a new space age, and like we have already been kind of in a we have a little bit of a plume here, and that might just be it entering or exiting the atmosphere as the vacuum Raptor engines kind of ignite themselves and make sure that they are getting the most optimal efficiency in terms of a vacuum, because they have longer nozzles. They have a little bit more of an expansion ratio at the end of it, so it has better, kind of TWR, thrust to weight ratio efficiency in terms of like fuel efficiency up in the vacuum of space. So they have specific vacuum Raptor engines. Now, down on its descent, when it does orbit back around into the Gulf of Mexico, they are going to be firing off, I think, only a single engine to make sure that it actually only has just barely enough thrust to gently touch down either into the launch tower. But since they're not going for launch tower, they're going for the splashdown in Gulf of Mexico, they're going to be trying to touch down as lightly as possible. Going to take a listen in here on the mission control audio. Anything going on? The little dot has kind of disappeared. I see some little splashes of gases out in the distance.
They terminated it.
That does not look good for Starship.
No,
right
that
there.
is not looking good.
It appears that Starship had flight termination system.
Yep, they have blown up the second stage.
Same stage. They got 8 minutes. Well, that could have been shut off. That could have been engine shut off.
Let's wait.
Yeah, let's wait on that.
I mean, let's predict here a little bit. I mean, the little dot in the sky, our little Starship 2 seems to have fully disappeared from our viewpoint, and then suddenly we see a rather large, what looked like explosion in terms.
Would shut down its engines.
It looks like they
Okay.
shut it before it.
I hear some cheering. What do we have going on here?
Tell by the excitement from the crowd here at Mission Control Center in Hawthorne.
And there's Elon sitting there with his stupid cowboy hat and almost like a NASCAR racing type of format.
Control Center behind us in Hawthorne. Everyone is super exciting. What a successful day this has been so far.
It appeared to just off the cuff. I mean, observer. It looks like they did terminate it. Like
Yeah, I mean,
short, which maybe could have let it going to Africa.
I'm trying to listen on the flight control audio and see exactly if we can get some confirmation of what has happened. But no, honestly, overall, even if they did end up having to flight terminate this, the second stage before they got a full orbit, and they got plenty. Any news? No, not quite hearing anything.
Oh, what happened?
So we are going to head into the coast phase.
What?
Planned for the next about hour and 5 minutes. We'll be returning around the T+1 hour and 15-minute mark, and that's while we're.
So they're going on towards a
to
coast
continue
phase.
on to its next step for re-entry. We're not totally sure what video we're going to get, and that video comes normally by overflying ground stations, but we don't have a ton along our flight path. So fingers crossed that we will get some via Starlink on this mission, since we're testing that out.
They didn't say they've rutted it.
So that was Seco?
That might have been
potentially
Seco,
just
the
Seco.
second engine cutoff. Yeah, meaning.
And also give us a moment. We are hearing some chatter on the net, so we're going to try to parse that for you.
Oh,
Okay.
parse it.
Parse, please.
They're trying to find out what exactly is going on. So they're saying that they're going into their coast stage to where they're going to be letting the Starship kind of just orbit around, and they're doing their second stage or cutoff is where their main ascension engines kind of cut off, and they start going over to those vacuum Raptor engines that I was talking about earlier. But it looked like almost like they had a flight termination.
By the way, I'm seeing recording on mission control.
Mission control.
Yes, we had one that we don't have access to anymore, mast cam, but it was triggered, so hopefully we might have lost it from shaking and stuff.
Well, let's see.
Oh my gosh,
We probably just lost the dish connection from the shaking.
Yeah.
But I bet we do have it recording beautifully.
Spencer, can you confirm or deny if we have any access to any of the pad cameras still?
Mr. Tully.
You can see that. Oh,
right here.
we're about to get an update.
Oh, we have a little bit of an update from the main mission control. What are they going to be saying here?
We have lost the data from the second stage. We had heard a call out that we were internal guidance, which means we were getting near the end of the approximately 6-minute burn of Starship. But we haven't gotten any more data since then, so we think we may have lost the second stage. So we would not be into coast phase. We wouldn't be able to come back in an hour or so and possibly get ready for reentry. However, what we do know right now is we had an on-time launch at 7 o'clock. We got through the boats.
Okay, so that is a little. We're gonna have to keep an ear out basically for what it is that they are going to be saying. So essentially, they're saying that they've lost signal with the second stage. So the first stage did great. They did a hot stage, and the first stage did have to do a flight termination a little bit afterwards because apparently there was a little bit extra forces than they thought doing that hot staging process. But the second stage seemed to have lifted off very properly into an orbital insertion to go ahead and do a full orbit around Earth and come landing down into the Gulf of Mexico. So right now, they believe themselves to be in a coast stage where it's going to be doing that with this vacuum Raptor engines, just kind of coasting around, and they're going to be coming back into the Gulf of Mexico. but they are saying that they have lost signal with the Starship 2. So they're not entirely certain if the flight termination system has actually gone off or if they still have control of it.
Honestly, such an incredibly successful day. Even though we did have a RUD or a rapid unscheduled disassembly of both the Super Heavy booster.
So they
and
are
the
saying
ship.
both.
That's great. We got so much data, and that will all help us to improve for our next flight.
Of course, and that's why we flight test.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I'm just gonna go ahead and run with that. It sounds like they have blown up the second stage as well, which that is exactly what that looked like before, because when we had a beautiful, great line of sight directly up into the Raptor engines of the second stage as they were doing that orbital insertion, and it seemed everything was going great, but then we had a kind of a sudden cutoff. Maybe it was right at Seco, the second engine cutoff, when they were about to go into a coasting stage, that maybe they realized that there was a problem trying to fire up the vacuum Raptor engines. Maybe they had a little bit of an issue in terms of trying to keep the connection with the vibrations of the Starship in general because of how much shaking was going on through the insertion, maybe even through like the max Q, where the maximum dynamic pressure was kind of pushing itself in on the rocket. Maybe that's when they lost their signal. But it did appear that as soon as we saw the engines cut off, there was a very large plume that seemed to very quickly expand itself out into a giant ball of what seemed like bluish, almost whitish gas. So that definitely seemed as though it had to been a rapid unscheduled disassembly of the second stage flight termination system. It did seem, I don't know how they were going to be able to kind of play that off as perhaps just a vacuum's going on for the coast stage. The plume seemed a little bit too big for the engine cutoff, a little bit too rapid for anything like that. So it does appear that they did have to do a termination system. But honestly, that is a 100% perfectly okay, because the primary objectives of this test was not necessarily to get a 100% success rate in terms of the mission. Of course, that would have been completely nominal in terms of trying to get everything to work perfectly, because honestly, you get more test data that way. However, honestly, this is a tenfold improvement from last time. Again, you know, last time they lost multiple engines immediately. Their stage or their ground padding of stage 0, the liftoff point, was absolutely destroyed. They had to rework everything. They had to put in a wash deluge system. Last time they barely got up to max Q, I think, before it started tumbling around, and they had to do a flight termination and blow that thing up. They got a lot of data from that last time. They're going to get tons of data about it this time. Again, that hot staging ring was probably the point of failure for both of the sections of the Starship, because when this thing is launching off, what hot staging separation really is that when you think of a rocket and it detaches from its bottom side, usually it detaches, it decouples completely, and you give it maybe like a good 5-10 seconds before the second stage of engines really start to like throttle up their thrust, turn on the engines, and start kind of the second stage to be able to power itself onward from there on. And the first stage typically either goes and splashes down in the ocean somewhere, crashes somewhere, or in terms of SpaceX, they try to retrieve their first stage a lot of the time with some of these ones, like look at the Starlink type of missions with their Falcon 9. Now, in this instance, when they're doing a hot stage and separation, before they even detach, before the top stage and the bottom stage even decouple from one another, you have the second stage engines already firing off without being detached. They're firing off into the first stage, into a very structurally sound dome at the top, and a flame diverter where it all comes out the sides, almost in a circular pattern around the Starship. Now, when it does that, though, the full force of, I believe it is 3 regular Raptor engines, they have 3 regular, and I think they have 3 vacuum, but the full force of those engines are basically being put directly into the top side dome of the first stage. Now, we saw maybe it was about 10 to 15 seconds after first stage separation from second stage, they did have to blow up the first stage. Now, it did appear that it was doing a proper boost back burn, where they're going to be trying to land it down into the Gulf of Mexico properly. But perhaps I think maybe there was a leak or a fire or something of the sort, or perhaps it got off a trajectory. You know, they did say that it had a nominal boost back burn, so maybe it wasn't a trajectory issue. But who really knows? We're going to have to find out what their test results are, because, yeah, hopefully we get to see it again. Let's listen in here on see what everyday astronaut Tim Dodd is saying.
And when we stabilize these, they're going to be even better. And also, we're hoping to get some global shutter cameras from Zcam soon, for hopefully by the next one.
Yes.
So it reduces the jello, it's called, because that's rolling shutter artifacts. So you see that right now a little bit, especially when it starts shaking around. But just look at how freaking clean that is.
Yep, as we were saying, like, look at those Raptor engines. They have all 32 Raptor engines completely firing off. I'm not seeing a single one of them being turned off. They're all looking good. They have a very clean vector. They have a very clean exhaust plume. They sadly do not have any of the shockwave cones going on, but they have a beautiful like array of all 32 engines firing off there. It was a fantastic liftoff. It went nominally in that aspect. And so perhaps because this was recorded, perhaps they'll actually be able to show us here what happened during the hot stage separation, if we can spot any issues that went on with the first stage that had to lead to it being kind of, rapidly disassembled in flight. Let's see what's going on here. They did launch for maybe about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes before there was a full separation, which should be almost any moment now as they get up here, which is also very interesting. You can kind of see the Methalox, all of that, all of the frost there on the side of the Starship. I can see some of it deplete as it kind of goes through its fuel source, and also has a lot of that heat source blowing off of the nozzle head. So it should be close to second stage separation here any moment. As you can tell, as they're getting higher up into the atmosphere, the plume is starting to expand out a little bit more. It starts to compress a little bit less, of course, as they start to get to, well, they seem to be cheering for some reason.
Nice work.
People said it'll never make it through first stage burn. It's too complicated.
They were wrong.
I would love to I would love to get on air right now and be.
Yeah, I would have to say, they were definitely wrong. I mean, I think there was lots of reason to be completely spectacle and like untrustworthy of the fact that this thing would ever lift off. It is the largest rocket ever to launch. It is the most ambitious. It is the most weird in terms of trying to land itself back down. It is the most complicated. It is the most away from the base format of what you would expect a rocket to be launching that would ever behave this way. And people are consistently amazed and thrown off by how much progress that they have made in this program. And again, I'm hoping we get to see the second stage separation. I thought it was a lot sooner before, so it's gonna be a little bit hard to see exactly what may have gone wrong when this happened. Unless they're looking at the first launch recording here, because it seems to be going on for a while. But no, we had a very successful launch. Even though, again, we had to blow up both parts, there is so much scientific data in terms of just like stress forces on the hot stage and ring, stress forces on the fuselage in general, stress forces on the separation. What were the main root causes for the terminations? Where can they fix the leaks? Where can they fix possible like issues? Where can they fix welds? Where can they fix issues at all? And this is a tenfold step forward from last time in general too. So they are making lots of progress. I don't think we are ever going to see a Starship necessarily go on a full orbital insertion and back to the control tower. Probably, I don't think a test like that's gonna be happening for maybe a couple or few years at most, because this is such an ambitious project. And although they do seem to move very fast, which I think they could be moving a lot faster, a primary concern of the reason why it took so long for the second Starship to even get off the pad and launch regardless is because they did have to go through approval through the FFA and the wildlife of fish and like bird regulations or whatever. So they had to do entirely new assessments of the entire systems in terms of how the water deluge system was going to be affecting the habitat around it with a freshwater system, because they are in a saltwater type of environment. They had issues with the FFA trying to get like regulations in terms of like flight termination systems and improvements and all this stuff. And so now that right there, as you can see there on the screen, is I think that's max Q area, and about when the first stage should be separating. I don't know. It looks like it. Yep, there is that stage separation. So it looks clean. It looks clean. It looks like it didn't really have much issues. You can see the 3 Raptor engines firing off there on the second stage. You see 3 little plumes. The first stage is doing a great job of turning back. Now, I think I called it out originally, is that there appeared to be a little bit of a drift. Now, I know that they said that the boost back burn was nominal, but as you can see, it does seem to drift off to the side by quite a bit, and it seems to be kind of spinning around a little bit more than what you'd expect. Like a boost back burn, I know that they are trying to turn it back, of course, and then try to get it land kind of close to the coastline a little bit back in the Gulf of Mexico, but it does appear to be spinning around a little bit more rapidly than what you would assume. Of course, we are not the SpaceX engineers. We don't necessarily know their entire flight plan for the first stage. However, they did a great job, but we're going to see here real shortly that they did do the flight termination system of the first booster. We need to take a listen in.
Which are, in this case, they're actually just the ullage. Okay, so that looks like a leak of some kind.
Yeah, and then there is that flight termination. Boom, bam, zam. That is quite an explosion.
Celebrating that shot right now.
Yeah, that is an amazing shot. That is an amazing footage. And look at the size of that plume. That tiny little rocket that was just a little kind of speck in the sky has created an explosion that has basically just filled up the entire cloud format.
And they finally made it to a launch.
Oh, I love that for them.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So even though they did have to flight terminate that first stage and second stage after losing connection, that is still some great data. They managed to basically get the second stage into an orbital insertion before having to flight terminate it. So they got a lot of good information in terms of how well the vehicle and rocket performed overall. The first stage, we need to see what happened. They did point out there shortly that perhaps there was a leak off to the side, but I think that was just part of the flight termination system because it was soon after that leak, it just immediately blew up. They did have to improve the flight termination system from last time because it actually took about like 2 minutes, I think, last time for it to properly blow up. So of course they have improved it, but it seemed to have been doing well, but it did have an issue kind of drifting off to the side by quite a bit. It seemed to be spinning and tumbling a tiny bit with that boost back burn. So we are a little bit concerned in terms of like the trajectory. Perhaps they had to blow it up. It maybe was going to be landing somewhere where they did not want it. But the area around the pad seems to be doing all right. There is a lot of water on the ground, as you can see in general. That water change system seems to have done its job properly. We didn't lose any of the Raptor engines, so none of the debris managed to shoot itself back up into the engine bay. So that's a very proper insertion in terms of getting off of the pad. We are probably going to be finding out a lot of information over the next few days, like how well did the pad actually perform? Did they have any issues of the water not being able to get out of the vents because they had the 32 engines all blasting directly into the vents? Did it work properly? Had any other equipment around in the yard kind of gotten damaged? You can even see here all the different cameras that they have set up for either like Space Padre, maybe in SpaceX themselves. We also have like the Space Gal. A lot of them have a lot of their cameras and equipment all set up. And of course, they all got their bags over to kind of protect it from the elements. And there is lots of footage. As many cameras as you see there is all footage for people. That is amazing. Look at all of that equipment. That is probably like $20,000 to $30,000 of equipment just sitting out there in the grass, waiting for anyone to almost come pick it up. But that is amazing. That is some great progress. Honestly, applause to SpaceX. Applause to let's not even say like the United States. Let's say an applause to humanity in general, to the fact that no matter where you are in the world, the fact that we do still have a new space age, we do still have a new space race. You know, China's been trying to do a lot with the moon. China built a new space station. They're trying to get to Mars. India has gotten to the south side of the moon. You know, the European Union, they've been trying to build up some of their rockets. Australia just got a launch license along with a combination of America. So there's lots of new news going on for space in general and commercialization of it. Blue Origin is doing all right. You know, SpaceX is doing good. We have other stuff oh god, I have so many different like rocket company names in my mind that I cannot think of right now for some dumb reason. They're escaping me. But there is a new renaissance of space in general. We're getting lots of interest in terms of space, in terms of colonization, resources, rocketry, companies building their own rockets more so than just, you know, the government/state funded type of programs such as NASA or, you know, other such programs of other countries. And it is fantastic. You know, people don't even necessarily realize of how much of a new age that we are in, especially with SpaceX being completely, or rather mostly successful with a lot of their launches. It really has brought into the new light of what is possible. How much can we put up there? What can we experiment with? And, you know, I am only 28 years old, so I'm hoping that it may be in the terms of like 50 to 60 years, hopefully when I'm still, you know, kicking and breathing, that we will be able to see exactly where all of these missions we have led us up to, especially the moon or the Moongate or, you know, Stargate project. And Starship is going to be a primary contender in trying to get the resources straight onto the surface of the moon. So to see them have this type of progress, even though that there were some terminations, this progress is honestly phenomenal. The fact that we have the largest spaceship ever, to tallest, the most fuel, the most engines, the widest, the biggest project and endeavor that the human race has ever really tried to capitalize on, you know, with good old capitalism. But the fact that we have managed to get this thing flying through the air, get it into such a beautiful insertion, and now all it seems though that they probably just had structural issues. Maybe they had wiring issues, just, you know, maybe they had a fuel tank rupture with the hot staging ring, putting all the extra dynamic pressure on top of the cone there at the top of the dome. Maybe perhaps that extra pressure from the Raptor engines firing off for the second stage really had an issue of kind of collapsing in that center core now that they had a little bit of less fuel. I mean, maybe it was even an issue of back pressure, pressurization of the systems, because usually when they run out of fuel in the first stage and even second stage, they're also backfilling that with, I believe, I want to say it is not methane. It might be methane because it's very condensable, but they backfill with other gases to make sure that they keep pressurization and pushing the fuels down into the engines. And on top of that, also pushing out the edges of the rocket. Because when you empty out these rockets, it's almost like making a vacuum on the inside, which allows the rocket to kind of collapse in on itself. So if you do not backfill pressure the tanks, then they are more likely to just kind of collapse in themselves, especially upon like max Q, and especially in that instance of the hot stage ring disconnect. So there could be an issue of back pressure. So maybe when the second stage lifted off of the hot staging ring, the first stage was doing a proper kind of burn back solution and on a great phenomenal trajectory. But in the terms of trying to turn the entire first stage around, which is just basically flying a skyscraper, and the fact of trying to turn that thing around and really just put all those dynamic pressures of basically pulling a 90 degree turn of G forces on this thing, there could have been an issue of like when it was turning around, it collapsed a little bit in the center, you know, in the center without the backfield pressure and kind of ruptured a tank. There did appear to be a leak at the very last moment that could have been part of the flight termination system. But honestly, a great launch. There is a lot to learn from this. And I don't really know what more else to say. So I am recording this at the same time. So I'll probably release this later as a little bit of a video so that people can kind of just come back and look for it, see what the type of stuff, gotta get those search terms, all that fun stuff. So if you enjoyed this coverage of the Starship SpaceX launch, then feel free to subscribe, because we have learned a lot today from the stage 0 of the water deluge system. We learned a lot from the hot ring separation of terms of the first stage and second stage separating. We learned a lot of how far the second stage got, basically into an orbital insertion type of trajectory around the Earth to come back, landing back into the Gulf of Mexico. But they did have to terminate for some odd issues. Maybe they got off a trajectory, but they said it was on a nominal trajectory. So there could have been a nominal number of issues. I can't even begin to wonder what have happened with the second stage, because it appeared to be good. But I think a lot of the questions are going to be primarily about the first stage, because the first stage is the one that's supposed to be burning back and landing again. So I think we're going to be finding a lot over the next few days. If I have the time, maybe I'll try to make a video about it as well. So, but other than that, I typically do other gaming content, roguelikes, and other space games and of the sorts. So, hey, if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the live stream, do all that fun stuff, make sure to comment, subscribe, like the video, all that crap. And other than that, DigiDs, I hope that you have a fantastic morning. I hope you have a fantastic day. And I hope you have a fantastic life in this new space age that is SpaceX and other commercializations of flight industries. So I still don't know how to do any of these outros, but there is one thing that I can always and will always guarantee you, is I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you, and bye-bye.